Hi, this is Dr. Stephanie Wautier, and I'm the host of Conversations with a Chiropractor. I believe healing often begins with connection, and that's really what this podcast is about. These are real conversations about health, healing, life, and the stories that shape us. Some guests come from the wellness world, some come from the community, and some simply bring a life experience worth sharing. My hope is that each conversation invites you to listen, learn, reflect, and maybe see your own life or healing in a new way. Sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy this conversation with a chiropractor. Conversations with a Chiropractor is a place for open dialogue and the sharing of diverse perspectives. While guests are encouraged to speak freely, their opinions are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of the host. Neither Dr. Stephanie nor Conversations with a Chiropractor endorse nor assume responsibility for statements made by guests. We hope you enjoy today's episode. Hey there, podcast listeners. This is Dr. Stephanie Wautier. You're listening to Conversations with a Chiropractor. Today, I am joined by an amazing woman, Aleksandra. She is a master of astrology, martial arts, and Hermetic philosophy. She has a focus on helping entrepreneurs and business executives foresee and prepare for imminent events. Historically, royalty and prominent people consulted astrologers. Today's insights are just as relevant, but today, corporations are the new monarchy, and entrepreneurs and executives provide the greatest opportunity for global impact. Aleksandra's martial arts background separates her from other astrologers and tarot readers, giving her piercing insight, strategic comprehension, and a maximum impact approach. She has taught astrology and tarot as an international instructor with a modern mystery school for 15 years, and she's also been in the Warrior of Light instructor and sensei teaching, and she'll have to tell me how to pronounce this, Boxe Français Savate around the world for 20 years.
You got it.
Yay! Aleksandra, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
It's my absolute pleasure. I'm so excited.
So I always like to ask people, how did your life's events bring you to this profession?
Oh my gosh. Well, my life's events, I guess we could say, started when I was about 5 or 6 years old. My grandfather was an amateur astrologer. And, he lived in a little town about 2 hours north of Toronto here, and it's all swampy, marshy kind of land. And so as much as I had fun going outside and picking up frogs and that kind of thing, when I didn't want to go outside, I would go and steal his astrology books. And I read about the Greek gods and goddesses, Athena and Hermes and Aphrodite and Zeus. And I fell in love with their stories. And there was something that was very real about them to me, familiar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I would go back to my grandparents' place, I would always go and steal his astrology books off the shelf. And I would go to the guest bedroom, which had a wall-to-wall closet full of snacks. So astrology, snacks, and I was in my own world, and it was absolutely amazing.
That sounds like a beautiful childhood, like a beautiful moment in your childhood, a safe place.
It was an amazing place. And so as I grew up, of course, I ended up going and receiving my education. So I received a degree in physical education and health from the University of Toronto. And I did work in healthcare, primarily in motor vehicle accident clinics for a number of years. But it wasn't for me. And I felt that I couldn't help people in the way I wanted to. Because whenever my patients were sitting in front of me, they were always complaining about the effects that the accident had on their life and on their being. They weren't really complaining about their physical pain. It was the change to their life and not being able to do the things that they wanted to do and having to come to grips with limitation that really was the thing that troubled them. In addition to dealing with lawyers and, and the insurance company and all of these things. And so as my patients were sitting in front of me, their issues were one of the soul, not not so much about the physicality of it. That was really what bothered them. And so I ended up leaving healthcare. And, I'd already begun doing astrological work on the side. And it was
Okay.
something that I would kind of chat about with my patients and, oh, you're a Virgo. Okay, no wonder you're such a stickler about the rules. And, you're actually good. You do your exercises. So I would chat with my patients, but I'd already started offering readings on the side, and I had become a healing practitioner with the Modern Mystery School. And so I had already embarked on my role as a healer. And as that started to take off, the I guess you could say pain or the cognitive dissonance that I experienced being in that world, knowing that yes, I can apply modalities and I can lead my patients through exercises, but that's not doing anything for their soul. And that's really the thing that's bothering them. And so I
Yeah.
made a leap.
Nice. That's exciting. I think there are so many of us that are healthcare providers, and I began my health journey. I was a registered nurse. I got my Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and then I became a chiropractor. And one of my patients who's actually a veterinarian said, Stephanie, you're like a narrative chiropractor. Like, I'm always wanting to know, like, that deeper side, like, how has this affected them emotionally? How has this affected their life and their relationships? So it's really like, I mean, I feel like we have that connection. Like, that's what you saw. And your solution for them, I mean, I don't have this solution. In fact, I'm excited to hear all about this because I don't know so much about it. But your solution was that, you had this experience in astrology. So, like, just give our listeners the very basic definition of what an astrologer or an astrologist is, and if there's like a difference with those two words.
They get used interchangeably, so they're pretty much the same thing.
Okay. This episode of Conversations with a Chiropractor is supported by Lemongrove oil. One of the things I'm always paying attention to, both in this podcast and in my work, is where something comes from. Not just what a product says it does, but who created it, why they created it, and whether there is real care behind it. That is one of the reasons Lemongrove oil feels like such a natural fit here. Lemongrove was founded by chiropractor Dr. Jerry Del Canton. This is not a random wellness brand that appeared overnight because CBD became popular. It grew out of the chiropractic world, where trust matters, where quality matters, and where people are often looking for thoughtful ways to support themselves between visits, during their busy seasons of life, and in the day-to-day routines that shape how they feel. Lemongrove offers professional-grade CBD products, including topical lotions, butters, roll-ons, and gummies. They focus on quality, transparency, THC-free formulations with third-party testing, and products designed with healthcare providers in mind. I think that matters because when you are choosing something for yourself or your family, you want more than nice packaging. You want to know there is a real philosophy behind it. If you're curious about Lemongrove oil, visit their website at www.lemongroveoil.com.
Visit the link in the description and use code DRStephanie at checkout to save 10% on your next order. This offer is exclusive to listeners of Conversations with a Chiropractor.
So really, what an astrologer does, if I go back to the old days of Hermes Trismegistus, who is said to have lived 8,000 to 12,000 years ago, the role of the astrologer is to help you know yourself so that you can maximize the impact of your goodness in this world.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful description because I feel like so many people might have a little bit of a negative connotation, like, oh gosh, like, there's a gypsy and she's reading tarot cards and, she told me that, I was going to marry a horrible man or, like, then there's that, like, that question of, do we choose something because we heard it or, like, are we living like a story that we heard about ourselves? So I love that description that you gave us. That's beautiful. That we really just, it's like a way to know ourselves more.
And to become yourself more. Dr. Stephanie, if you think back to when you were a child, how many potential areas of development and talents and abilities did you have back then?
So many. Like I told someone this weekend that I really wanted to be a beautician when I was growing up. I'm the one to like fix my sister's hair and cut the Barbie's hair. And then, I wanted to be a dentist for a while. I mean, so like, yeah. And then a musician. Many, many things.
Right. Now, did you develop all of those things?
No, I did not.
So there are areas of potential that are lying inside of you that have not been developed. And then also, with your current skill set and knowledge that you have, do you not still encounter challenges and roadblocks, that really boil down to coming up against your own nature?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And so not only is astrology meant to point out the areas of yourself that you haven't necessarily developed yet, because it can do that. And that's one of the things that I really work with for people who want to make a career change or transition.
Mm.
But then also, we come up against our own nature all the time.
Mhm.
And there are lessons that need to be learned. And so, most people call that your failings. Very often, your failings are qualities that you don't understand fully or have not supported in the correct way.
Mm.
And so, because of that, there's no mastery.
Interesting. So this is the kind of work that you do with people, with executives, with entrepreneurs. So basically you're helping us get out of our own way. Perhaps as we learn a little bit more about who we are and I don't know, the fiber of our being, maybe.
Absolutely. And there's a second piece to it as well, because there are always universal cycles at play.
Mm.
So we have cycles within the macrocosm, which, are cycles that are basically affecting the human collective. So to give you an example, just a couple of days ago, Jupiter shifted into into Leo. Or alternatively, earlier this year, Neptune moved into Aries. And Neptune changes signs every 14 years. And Neptune governs over our social ideals. So, of course, there are macrocosm cycles that we're working with, but then there's also the microcosm. And so we also go through our own cycles that are interrelated with what is happening within the macrocosm. And so when I work with entrepreneurs and executives and athletes and, people in performance industries, my role is to also help them understand where they're at in those cycles. And that's really important because if you're trying to achieve something, but you're not in the phase for it, you're going to start banging your head against the wall, trying to figure out why it's not working. I always give the example of trying to plant seeds in Toronto in January. The ground is cold, hard, and inhospitable to life. So if you plant seeds and water them and stand over it, banging your head going, why isn't it growing? It's because you didn't necessarily work with a propitious moment. Now, that doesn't mean that positive progress can't be achieved. It's just what is propitious in that moment. It's to use every moment to your advantage.
That is a really cool word, propitious. Say that again.
Propitious.
Okay, give me the definition of that word for our listeners too, as I'm like, propitious.
So it's similar to prosper.
Okay.
And so propitious is, demarks a time that would be prosperous.
I love that. So I'm an entrepreneur, I'm also a clinician and, I wear a few different hats. So like, some of us that are in this realm are like, girl, we are too busy. Like, right. We are too busy to take a moment and do this big analysis and like what might feel like our life would be upheaved if we, took this microscope on ourselves. What would you say to that person?
Oh my gosh. Well, what if you could buy time back? So when you don't look ahead, you end up having to constantly adapt to whatever is coming your way. So you end up being the terminus and having to deal with whatever is coming at you. What if in looking ahead, you could actually make things flow you? One of the hidden concepts of astrology, if you're really working with a true astrologer, is that you are a magician. Every one of us is. And the premise is to use these cycles to your advantage.
And the first step would be even understanding the cycles, right? Because many of us don't. Many of us don't.
Absolutely. And what if in doing certain things in certain timing made it easier?
Right. That, like, what a lesson. I'm in my fifth decade of life, and what a lesson we could tell our younger selves, right? Like, gosh, don't bang on that door over and over. You've got to wait, or like the timing of it, or I mean, I am a Christian and I do believe in God, and I believe in God's like divine timing, and like, just if we could have any insight into what that timing is and save ourselves some of the heartbreak and hassle, and maybe even, like, I hate to say, financial ruin, or like, maybe even prevent a catastrophe that has happened. I mean, that would be profound.
Absolutely. And I really like to work with things constructively. I always tell my clients, what do you want to achieve this year? What do you want to manifest? And working with that, then we take all of these cycles and we use them to maximum benefit, because
I love.
there are times for your business. There are times for your personal life. There are times for your health. And also sometimes you just need a reminder about how these cycles are impacting you, because some of them do bring up challenges, aspects of your own nature that need attention. And part of my job is also to remind you in those instances. And so let's take, for example, let's say that you have an aspect that brings up issues of victimhood. Right. So let's say that Neptune is in an opposition to Mars in your chart. And so there's issues of victimhood that are coming up. And so you always feel like you're at the terminus and at the bottom of things and feel helpless. But it's not that you're meant to feel that way. What's actually being asked of you is to overcome that and to recognize your power and your agency in the process. And so my role is also to remind you in those moments to be the better of you, to be the
Mhm.
best of you, because we all need a guide. I've had guides, and so I serve as a guide unto others.
That's really interesting. So when you say that you're like reading someone's charts, you're taking their like day and time of birth, and like, so like my birthday is February 27th. So all the people that have born on February 27th, would you say that we have a similar, I don't know, personality type, or a similar? Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Even I know that we're getting really deep and really specific, and I'm like sort of bobbering it up to the top. But like, would you say that yes, like someone who is like a Pisces is going to have these tendencies, or XYZ? What would you say about that?
So I work with what's called the entire natal chart.
Okay.
So that is created by the date, so full date, time, and location of birth. And what
Mhm.
that does is it creates a map of the planets and their orientation to the Earth at the time of birth.
Okay.
And I mean, can you well, okay, I'm going to use the word stereotype here, because if we only go by zodiac signs, that is a stereotype.
Okay.
Everyone is individual and they really do have a unique print.
Like their
And
fingerprint.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So to describe it to you, Dr. Stephanie, the planets move constantly. So February 27th this year is not the same as February 27th next year or the year after that, right? And so every year the planets are going to be sitting in different orientations. And just to have a little bit of fun, the exact place that the sun was at when you were born, so do you happen to know what time you were born, Dr. Stephanie?
Oh gosh. I want to say it was around like 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't have the exact time.
Okay, let's use that. So
Okay.
10 a.m., February 27th, the year you were born. Well, the next year, for the sun to return to exactly the same spot, it will not be at 10 a.m. on February 27th.
Hmm.
And so that's something called the solar return,
Okay.
because our year is not a perfect 365.
Right, right. Yeah.
So
Intriguing.
So that concept of the solar return is actually a predictive technique that gets used to look at the upcoming cycle and the themes that are going to be of importance for you.
Hmm.
So looking at that natal chart, there are certain archetypes that exist in the chart, and we call those archetypes planets. So for example, the moon is the archetype or the avatar of the emotional and intuitive nature.
Hmm.
Mercury is the archetype or avatar of the mind and communication. Mars, of vitality, our ability to hold boundaries, and the more warlike, aggressive aspects of our nature. Venus, of relationships.
Hmm.
And so not only do we look at where they are within that map, we also look at the dynamics that they have between each other, because there are certain geometries that denote different kinds of relationships.
Wow. This is intriguing.
Yeah, because within every one of us are all of these archetypes.
Hmm.
And their relationship is very much what dictates our inner world, how we experience things, how we come to know ourselves, the challenges that we encounter, the priorities that we have, and how those priorities interact with one another.
I don't know if this is the right word. As I'm like sort of processing, I shared with you, I don't know much about this, but would you say that these are like predictors / characteristics of our like nature? Like,
To a
and
certain degree.
to a certain degree?
To a certain degree. So the one thing that's kind of missing, and this is where a lot of people misunderstand astrology, is the missing ingredient is free will.
Okay.
You are free to grow, to develop, to learn, to acquire wisdom, to create amazing things in this world. You are also free to screw it up completely.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's sort of like, so if this like is in the astrological world, that's sort of like in the Christian world too. Like you have the free will to, say yes or no or do what you want, whether or not yeah, like whichever choices you're making. That's interesting.
Of course. And for the most part, astrology really has been kind of characterized as this predict how you behave.
Hmm.
But that was
Yes.
never its original purpose.
Mm.
So as I mentioned to you, the original founder of astrology, his name was Hermes Trismegistus. He lived 8 to 12,000 years ago, it's said. And astrology was often used for royalty as a means of helping them grow and develop in their strengths and abilities. The more responsibility you have, the greater the weight you carry, the more you need your light and gifts.
Hmm. Yeah.
You can't be a mediocre person running a kingdom.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's profound. Absolutely.
You can't be a mediocre person to run a successful entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I'm always reading like self-help books,
Right.
trying to, take the iron to the fire and sharpen my skills and trying to be better.
And,
Yeah.
I have a book that will be coming out next year. It's actually called Know Yourself, Perform Better.
Exciting.
One of the key ingredients missing in a lot of self-help books is that it has to be about you. So
Hmm.
it can't just be a formulated system. If you don't know yourself, if you haven't taken the time to understand yourself, to understand the qualities and how they have manifested as your strengths and abilities and areas of wisdom, and also how they have manifested challenges because you haven't necessarily supported them in the right way, or if there's healing from your past that needs to happen as well, right? So you have to know yourself first.
Hmm. Yeah.
Otherwise, any other outside methodology is not necessarily going to land with the impact that it could.
Interesting. Wow. That's really poignant. It is interesting to think about when kings and rulers were using this as like a tool, and why or how do you think that it sort of became, I don't know if diluted is the word, or less prominent, like how or why do you think that cultural shift happened?
Well, we can thank the 70s, the New
Okay.
Age movement.
Okay. Okay.
So to have your astrological chart, especially if you think like thousands of years ago, first of all, astrologers were probably some of the most educated people in the entire kingdom.
Hmm.
Number one, first of all, they had to be versed in math and geometry because
Wow.
they would use an astrolabe and they would go and calculate the position of the planets.
Wow.
So they had to be versed in math and geometry. They had to be able to read. They
Yeah.
had to understand human nature, and they needed to be able to do that and to understand not only how to communicate with a person, but also how all of these astrological energies applied to the various facets of life,
Mm,
because we can apply them to individuals, but then there is a form of astrology called mundane astrology, which looks at the effect of astrology on things like the weather, on crops, on trade, war, all those things.
wow.
So that's the origins of astrology. So we went from being the most educated people in the kingdom, or amongst them anyways, to the stereotype that you described earlier. The gypsy who tells you a bad fortune and asks for $5,000 to fix it, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
And truthfully, it is the 70s that changed that.
Really?
And so I know. So here's the interesting thing. Publishers saw not just the relevance, but the, I guess you could say, untapped market of astrology.
Okay.
And, to get your chart done back then, you actually would have had to go see somebody. So obviously, you can't really use true astrology in the publishing world because accessibility is going to be very limited. But you know what most people do know? Almost everybody knows their birthday.
Yes. Yeah.
So there was a significant shift towards zodiac sign books.
Okay.
And that began the process of diluting what was an incredibly intellectual venture into metaphysics, understanding human nature, and its applications to, human wellness in the world on a grander scale.
Hmm.
And, if you read books prior to the 70s, it blows my mind, Dr. Stephanie. There are authors who were professors at the University of California. They actually had like a little metaphysical branch. If you go back and read Broughton's magazine, Broughton's monthly journal, right? So that was an astrological journal in the 1800s, 17 and 1800s. And if you look at the work that is there and its applications and the political events that were happening at the time and how they wrote about it, like these people were not dumb.
Wow.
But when
Right.
people find out that I'm an astrologer today, they liken me to a fraud. And it's like, you don't understand. Prior to the 70s, if someone was an astrologer, they were highly educated, probably did a lot of research, and had been studying on the subject for years, because everything prior to the 70s is an incredibly intellectual venture into the topic.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, they were scientists, they were mathematicians. I mean, but again, and I mean, I was born in the 70s, so obviously my entire lifetime, and if we're only learning what we learn through like pop culture or whatever is in our realm or our arena, then yeah, absolutely. It, even as a chiropractor, we're sort of like the bastard sons of the healthcare world. And I don't know if I should share this story, but I gave one of my acquaintances a gift certificate for massage and a few other little gifts, right? And she said, "Well, are you going to do the massage?" And I said, "No, I have a massage therapist that does the massage." And she said, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "You don't know what a chiropractor does? Like, you don't know, how we analyze the spine and the nervous system and what an adjustment is." And she didn't. She didn't know. And that's, last year, 2025. And, we think like this profession began in the late 1800s. And I was talking to a guest a few weeks ago about how like the AMA, the American Medical Association, actually had a lawsuit against against the American Chiropractic Association for practicing medicine without a license. So, one thing that I really strive to do on this podcast is to give people a voice, to share like what is real and what is true, and to educate the general public because gosh, why are people obsessed with true crime? I mean, like, I see these like forums, these, women forums, and they're like, hey, what good true crime episode, of a podcast are you looking at? And I'm like, gosh, don't we really want to look at what's like good and true and what can make us better people? What can make the world better? Because we know that, the more we know ourselves and the better that we are able to adapt to our life's, situation, the better, like vibrationally, the entire planet will be. So,
Yeah,
girl, like
100%.
tell it to us. Tell us,
Well, I'll say it this way, marketing ruined astrology, and my partner is a chiropractor, so I understand. And to this day, some of the stigma that he gets, like he has a fellowship in physical and rehabilitative therapy, and like the stigma that he gets, even physiotherapists who didn't necessarily want to work with him because he was a chiropractor running a multidisciplinary clinic. It's astounding. And that stigma can last for a long time.
Yes.
And in the relative history of astrology, the damage that's been done has been done in a short time, truthfully, 50 some odd years.
Yeah.
However, that's why I'm out here speaking, because I want to change that narrative, because that's not what it is.
Well, I'm excited for your book that's coming out next. Did you say next year?
Next year.
Next year. Okay. Wonderful and exciting. Aleksandra, tell our listeners if they're intrigued and they want to connect with you, how do they go about doing that?
Well, they can find me on my website, which is astrologerroyale.com. And I also have a free ebook while they're there. It's called Star Powered Resilience. And so it is a zodiac inspired guide to understanding your professional strengths and talents, and also with some quick tips and tricks on how to mitigate stress as well.
We all need that. We absolutely need more resilience and more ways to cope with stress. Absolutely. Now, if somebody wants to get a deep dive and they want you to look at them very specifically and personally, what does that look like?
So when I generally work with my clients, the very first thing that I do is we do their natal chart. I need to understand the soul that I'm connecting with. I need to understand their light. I need to understand their challenges so that as I guide them forward with the forecasting, I also am cognizant of their nature and helping to be that guide for them and to remind them of the best parts of themselves in the moments where they're struggling. And one of my clients, a musician actually, he's like, darn it, Alex, I don't always like it when I talk to you because you always remind me of my better nature.
And how we can be better, right? Yes.
How we can be better and make the right decisions for ourselves.
Well, I just feel like this is really a wonderful, wonderful thing for us to dive into. I'm so grateful that you gave us this time on my podcast. Tell us again that website, because I think, is there an E there? Like, would you spell it out for us?
Oh, yes. It's astrologerroyale.com. So astrologer, astrologerroyale.com.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Aleksandra, anything else that you want to share with our listeners before our time is done?
Don't underestimate yourself. There is untold amounts of goodness inside of you that are just waiting to come out. There's always divine help. And when you pray above, and then you also pray within, because there's an amazing soul within. And a lot of times your challenges in life don't necessarily need divine intervention. They need more of you to come out and to be that light for you.
That's poignant. That's beautiful. Well, anyone listening, jump on astrologerroyale.com, book an appointment with Aleksandra, and yeah, I love it. Let your light shine brightly.
Yes.
Thank you for your time.
It's been my absolute pleasure. I had such a wonderful time with you.
So did I. Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, would you please rate it, review it, like, or subscribe? You can find me on social media at wautierwellness.com, Dr. Stephanie Wautier on Instagram, or Wautier Wellness Chiropractic and Massage on Facebook. And I'm so curious where your next conversation will take you. This episode of Conversations with a Chiropractor is supported by Lemongrove oil. One of the things I'm always paying attention to, both in this podcast and in my work, is where something comes from. Not just what a product says it does, but who created it, why they created it, and whether there is real care behind it. That is one of the reasons Lemongrove oil feels like such a natural fit here. Lemongrove was founded by chiropractor Dr. Jerry Del Canton. This is not a random wellness brand that appeared overnight because CBD became popular. It grew out of the chiropractic world, where trust matters, where quality matters, and where people are often looking for thoughtful ways to support themselves between visits, during their busy seasons of life, and in the day-to-day routines that shape how they feel. Lemongrove offers professional-grade CBD products, including topical lotions, butters, roll-ons, and gummies. They focus on quality, transparency, THC-free formulations with third-party testing, and products designed with healthcare providers in mind. I think that matters because when you are choosing something for yourself or your family, you want more than nice packaging. You want to know there is a real philosophy behind it. If you're curious about Lemongrove oil, visit their website at www.lemongroveoil.com.
Visit the link in the description and use code DRStephanie at checkout to save 10% on your next order. This offer is exclusive to listeners of Conversations with a Chiropractor.